Hi, this is Ralene Berry with RaleneSpeaks. Today I am here at the Bounce Back DNA movement, and I am truly excited to be here with you today. I am sharing the topic of climbing stairs blindfolded. Have you ever tried to climb stairs blindfolded? It's not easy. But sometimes when you are in a situation where God is calling you to something, or you feel a desire to need to do something, that you're actually blindfolded. That's what faith is all about. Me personally, I know that there's been many a times in my life, especially in the last 10 years, where I have literally been climbing stairs blindfolded. And it's not fun, but at the end of the day, it is actually how God uses us to get where He wants to go with us. So today I'm going to be sharing with it. I'm going to take a moment, allow many of you to join us today. I would like you to share it. Take a moment to share, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned, I am Ralene Berry of RaleneSpeaks. I am an author, an international speaker, as well as a licensed minister. I serve faithfully, preaching the gospel, but I have a testimony, a story that God uses in many different ways. And this message today of climbing the stairs blindfolded is a part of my testimony, my story. Many years ago, I was asked to speak at a Speak Your Truth conference. And I didn't know why I was being called to share on such a platform, but I realized that God was using me in such a way that my testimony, the very things that I wanted to hide, the very things that I wanted to run from, were the very things that God was using to actually be the platform for the ministry God has given me. And that's kind of how RaleneSpeaks was birthed. I have been speaking all my life. I've been in Toastmasters, I've been in all kinds of different things, but I never told my story because it was always my story. But then I realized that God had His own story for me, and that story was for me to share. The Bounce Back DNA movement is something that is dear and precious to my heart. I actually happen to be really good friends with Teresa Holmes. I love you, girl, for all that you do through this amazing Bounce Back DNA movement. It was something that I came a part of a few years ago when there was an anthology. Actually, it was before that. I spoke on one of her amazing events, and it was a blessing for me. But it also started a platform for me to share my story. I didn't know, as I was mentioning, why God was putting me in a place where I was sharing my story. Today's topic of climbing stairs blindfolded is interesting because I'm reminded of Martin Luther King, and I'm going to quote him as much as I possibly can. He said, "Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase." When I left California after my divorce, I'd been married for 20 years to my high school sweetheart, the man of my life, and the father of my daughter. I felt like I was climbing blindfolded. I felt like God was calling me to do some things that I never, ever, ever thought I'd be doing. The first step was leaving California. I'd never thought I'd leave California. But you know what? That yes to leaving California was the beginning of steps on that staircase. I was sharing with a lady today, and it was very, very interesting because I'm looking at staircases, and if you look at staircases, you don't really know what's at the top. You don't even know sometimes how far it's going to go. But in order to get to the top, you got to take that first step. You got to take, as I will call, a leap of faith to take that first step. So for me, leaving California was that first step. Okay. Nothing bad about California. My hometown, my home state, love it. Always will be a Cali girl, die-hard Cali girl. But at the end of the day, I knew that in order to get where God was taking me, I had to take a step. And that was away from California. Yeah, now my babies are there. My daughter is there. And I truly love California. But in order for me to be used in such a way, I had to take a step by faith to do what God said. Now, I didn't know where God was taking me. I didn't know. I mean, hey, I was going to Beaumont, Texas. I'll be real with you. That's where my family is, and that's where everyone said I needed to be. You know what? And it's so interesting. That first step was the first yes. The first yes. But then here I am now. I'm in Conroe, Texas. I've been here almost 10 years. And so I'm thinking the end all was Beaumont, Texas. Nor did I know that the steps that God was getting ready to do through me was based upon that first yes. Okay. When you take that first step, climbing those stairs, you don't know where God is taking, but you got to take it. You got to take that first step. For me, it was that first step, saying, okay, bye, California. Bye, brother that said he loved me. Bye, whatever it was. I had to say bye so that I could get to where God was taking. Where he was taking me, because at the end of the day, I really didn't know where the end would be. I still don't know. Some days you might see a little glimpse of it, and I believe that's how God works with me, one step at a time. Each one of my yeses takes me a little closer and a little bit deeper to where God is calling me to be. Now, if when I left California, if someone would have told me that I would be a licensed minister, no, I was raised. Women didn't preach. Women don't do these things. That's how I was raised. You know, that's all I knew. And so I had to take that first step. If someone would have told me I'd be an author, I'd have told you you're alive from the pits of hell. But here I am. Not only am I the author of the book, as I encourage you, I encourage myself. I'm also a part of several anthologies because of that first yes. Taking that first step, as Martin Luther King said, that first step. Even when I don't see the staircase, even being an author, I'll tell you a little bit about that. I have been writing all my life. Never imagined writing a book. Never, ever thinking about writing a book. I wrote because it was my mental health, for my sanity. I wrote everything. You know, they made me mad today, so I wrote it down. Okay? I got a massive headache, so I wrote about it. The doctors don't understand how I got this sick, so I wrote about it. So I have years and years and years of all these journals. And then I was always telling a story. I was teaching scrapbooking. I'll never forget. And every time I go to teach a story about how to put together a scrapbook, I tell some story about what God did this, or when my mama died, or when my sister died, or all these other things. These were my therapeutic ways of sharing and teaching. So I did not know that God was going to tell me to write a book. And I'll never forget when God told me to write that book. I'm like, God, why me? Who wants to hear my story? Little old me from Los Angeles, California. who lived 20 some years in Santa Barbara. Why would anybody want to know anything about me? But God said, write it anyway. Little did I know that that same story would be the very thing that is a platform for me internationally, that would allow me to preach and teach and share what God is doing in and through me around the world. Little old me from Los Angeles. And I still humbly submit to him, all for his glory. Because at the end of the day, I just know that I couldn't do this unless it was for him. So now I'm looking towards, okay, God, I don't see the top of the staircase, but I trust you in the journey. My writing was my therapy, yes. But at the end of the day, I did not know that God was going to say, put it in a book so somebody could be encouraged. So for me, it was taking one little step at a time, not knowing where God was taking me. So the book, as I said, now remember, I haven't shared that much about it yet, but I was homeless when I left California. And a lot of people don't like me sharing that story, but I was homeless. And when I say I was homeless was, I didn't have a home of my own. I had family that was loving on me. I had people that loved me. I had places to lay my head, but at the end of the day, it was not mine. And there was many a nights that I slept in my car because of what I was going through. I was sharing yesterday a little bit about it, and pride would make us do a lot of things. You know, we don't want to tell people what we're going through. We don't want to do things, but sometimes we got to let pride go, because scripture say pride comes before the fall. And I believe that until I acknowledge where I was not going to be delivered from where I was. So for me, taking those first steps was the beginning of so much more. It allowed me to be able to write the book. I didn't have no money. I literally did not. I still, to this day, if you ask me where the money came from to write the book, I can't really tell you, because I know it was by God's grace. Because literally the book came together within 6 months. A friend of mine connected me to an editor. And I actually self-published, because I give shout out to my pastor at the time, Dr. John Adolph, and his thing is that, baby, you got to pay yourself first. And he said, and you got to self-promote yourself. And so I studied everything that I possibly could about writing a book, about publishing a book, and if I needed an editor. So I did all these things here with the anticipation of what God might do through this book. And the money, again, the lady said, baby, you're going to need $3,000 to do this editing. So I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to trust you through this process. And that's, again, taking a little bit more steps on those steps that I don't see the end of. And so even that, I finished the book within record time and was able to pay a little bit at a time of that $3,000. And I don't think it takes $3,000 now, so don't quote me on that, but that's what it took at that particular time, because I didn't have anybody design the cover and all those things. So all of those things were coming together. And so, but it was truly my first step that allowed all of those things to fall into place. So the book actually became the platform for so many other things. And I want to share this as an author. A lot of times we think that the book is going to be the financial blessing, but actually the book is actually your calling card. Okay. It is the thing that's going to open the doors for some things else. So write it, write the story, get your story together and do it. It might not be the thing that's going to sell and give you $1 million. No. Am I making $1 million? No, not through my book. My book allows me a place and a platform in order for me to be able to speak and to minister and do other things. So it is a calling card. Now, are there best-selling authors out there, and do I believe that God can do that? That's another one of those things where I'm climbing blindfolded, not knowing where God is going to take this book or the next one, and you know how I'm talking now, because right now, because of the walking by faith, I know that it is truly by God's grace that I'm able to continue to write through all the things that I'm continuing to go through. So for me, the book was one of my very first things of climbing the stairs blindfolded, especially after being homeless. The second step of those stairs, and again, I want you to envision staircase. Okay. My house used to have these stairs in it, and I would take I'd take a little step. I might have to take a step back a few times because I'm getting a little old. So I take a little step back. I take another couple steps back. That's how climbing blindfolded is that you know what you might need is at the top, but you got to take your time as you walk up. So I took that first step, not knowing what God was going to do. The next step for me was accepting the call into ministry. And it opened up things. But I'm going to share something with you. Talking about blindfolded, I'm thinking the calling of ministry meant, oh, then you're going to be one of them you're going to preach every Sunday, or you're going to sit on the front row and look cute. I'm one of them old school Baptist women, so I'm thinking, okay, I got my robe on and my collar and all the other stuff. That was my vision or my thought. Because that's how when we take those steps, we kind of think we have a vision in our mind of what it's going to look like and whatever. Even speaking, I had a vision of what that was going to be. And God has truly blown my mind taking that first step. So when I took that first step, it was, okay, no. Some Sundays I might be praying behind the scenes. Some Sundays I might be doing something else. But little did I know, within a year or two, I'm in Cuba evangelizing and spreading the gospel, preaching. Little old girl from California, in Cuba. I don't know Spanish. I'm just going to be real with you. I don't know Spanish, but I was there, sharing the gospel, and people were accepting Christ because of the work that God was doing in and through me. Now, I'm really, really transparent about the fact that this is all God. This is not me. This is truly me taking those steps and allowing God to do the work. Because even going to Cuba was one of those things of, Lord, I ain't got no money to go to Cuba. But all the money came together because of that one little step of saying yes. Yes. Sometimes all we need to say is yes. Because our yes takes us to the next step and gets us closer and closer to what's at the top of the stairs, even blindfolded. So for me, I did not know last year, maybe it was last year, that was last year, I had the privilege of speaking in the Philippines to a room full of amazing women. It was the Beauty Out of Brokenness event that I did in the Philippines, and I had done that there as well as in Dominican Republic. And if you'd have told me my first steps, writing the book, or accepting the calling, or whatever those things would have been some of the things that I would have done, I wouldn't have believed it, because it was still me climbing blindfolded. I still climb blindfolded. Just last year, I changed churches. When I moved to Beaumont, I love me some John Adolph. I love my pastor, but I felt God telling me it was a time for another step. Okay. And It's scary making those steps blindfolded because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if this is truly the step God wants you to make. You don't know if people are going to receive you. And we also get comfortable. Have you ever been at the bottom of the steps and it looked real comfortable? And you don't want to make that next step. That next step is scary. And so last year, I had just come back from the Philippines. I spent an amazing month touring and speaking in the Philippines. I work for Grace School of Theology, which I am truly honored to serve with an amazing team. And I always want to give them shout outs because I can't do anything that I do without these amazing team members. And so I'm just coming back and I feel a calling that it was time for me to move my membership from one church to another. And I'm like, Lord God, I'm comfortable. I love where I am. I don't want to do it. Oh God, I just don't want to do it. But I had to be obedient. Obedience is so better than sacrifice. I tell you no lie. Obedience is the best thing that ever happened to me. So that very first thing I did was, and again, I'm being very transparent. I told you I didn't want to do it. Okay, I didn't want to do it. It's not like the church that I'm at right now was not all this great. I just didn't know. It was that fear, the thing that you don't see at the top of the stairs. And so I'm like, okay, God, I'm comfortable. I don't want to do this. I don't want to leave. I know what I'm doing over here. I know my comfort zone. I love my little spot on the front row. I love me some preaching at this church. I love the singing. I love everything. Only thing I didn't love was the 2-hour drive. And so, but I'm like, okay, God, you're sending me somewhere else. Oh, and I had to pray about it. I had to pray. I consulted many of my amazing mentors, and I'm truly blessed to have the people that God has placed into my life. And so as I'm speaking to them, it's like, all right, God, what are you doing? And I tell you this because I clearly knew that God was sending me somewhere else, but I needed to take that next step. Okay. Remember, I'm still on the steps here. I'm still on the steps. And so I'm thinking about this next step. So again, because we all want to know what's at the top. Why am I taking these steps? We always got to have some direction. We always got to have some direction. The direction is upward. Okay. We might not see the full vision, but we always know it's upward. So as I'm climbing this step, God put in my spirit, and this is how God works with me. God works with each and every one of us differently. For me, it's in my spirit. I can tell you when God is speaking to me. And so in this particular case, he was telling me that it was time that I moved my membership. And I didn't understand why. And so one of my dear friends, graduated from seminary together, he shows up, I believe, at the office. And I'm like, okay, God, all right, I hear you. I hear you. So, and he's a pastor of a church not far from me. It's still an hour away, but not 2 hours. So I moved my membership to this church in Cypress, Texas. And it was after not only did he show up at our office, he was the guest speaker for one of these events. So he was just like, he just kept showing up. And when I'm talking about this blindfolded thing, sometimes God gives you a glimpse, just a little bit of glimpse. And so at this moment, I'm seeing him. I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. I'm getting the message. So I actually, I mentioned to Pastor Hoskins and shout out to Pastor Eric Hoskins. Love my pastor, and will always love John Adolph. And I'm truly blessed to have these two amazing, powerful men in my life that are helping me climb blindfolded. And so Pastor Hoskins and I had a conversation, and that conversation was truly a blessing because it showed me that I might be blindfolded, but God has so much more for us. Okay. And I'm sharing my story, but I'm hoping that I'm encouraging somebody that don't know what God is calling them to. Someone that wants a better job, and they're not really sure if in order to get that other job, you might have to leave something. God might have to close some doors in order for you to get there. In my case, it was the ending of my marriage. Lord God, I would have probably not wanted to end my marriage to do these things, but if that's what God had to use, I look back now and realize that that closed door was the opportunity for so much more. Now, I am a huge proponent of marriage, so I'm not saying end your marriage. Please do not say that Ralene told you to end your marriage so you can go where God takes you to do. In my particular case, I believe that that closed door was the beginning of some steps that I had to take in order to get where God has taken me. And so for me, I began to realize that these steps were steps that I also believe that God places people in our lives for us to be able to take those steps. When I accepted the calling, and Pastor Adolph was the one that I called that night, he was the one who clearly told me, okay, baby, it's time. You've been faithful over a few things. Okay, so now let's take that next step. But each one of those steps are like, have you ever watched a baby that is taking their steps for the first time, and they take a little step and they fall back. They take a little step and they fall back. That's kind of how climbing the stairs blindfolded is, because you're not really sure. But I love babies because they got the tenacity to get back up and keep trying. Some of us as adults, we don't have that same thing. When we fall down, we're like, okay, enough's enough. I'm not finna fall down no more. I'm not finna do this anymore. And so, but I believe that for me, I had to keep getting back up. Okay. After experiencing cancer, depression, if you've ever followed me before, I talk about my 4 Ds: divorce, despair, depression, and disease. And so I've been very, very, very sick, and there's times that I'm still very, very sick. But I try to continue to climb those stairs despite my circumstances. As I mentioned, the Beauty Out of Brokenness tour, it's all about finding beauty despite your brokenness, despite the things that are happening in your world, despite lack of money, despite illness, despite all of those things. I even believe that writing a book, when I wrote my book, I was in the heat of just finding out that I had cancer and not knowing if the surgery was going to be the healing thing, or if I was going to have to do chemo or whatever it is. And I was scared, but I had to keep on writing. And writing was my place to handle the depression. It was my place of handling the disease and all the other things that I was going through, the depression. And it's like one of those catch-22 things. You get one thing. Have you ever had an illness and you got that illness and it brings about some other illness and that other illness? And that's kind of what was happening with me. And so I don't want to forget to tell you that all of this was not fun, and it never is fun, because sometimes God allows us to do some things and work through some things so that we can trust Him more. Okay. Beauty Out of Brokenness is based upon James 1, which says that we can count it all joy in the midst of our trials. And joy is something that is internal, and it comes from our relationship with Christ. It is not our external things. It might not be the fact that I have that, I shared this one time where, how can you find joy when you're sick? How can you find joy when you don't know where your next meal is coming from? How can you find joy when you're sleeping in your car? Or whatever the situation is. But the reason why you can find joy is because joy comes from from Christ for me. I know that I'm not called here to preach. I'm not here to preach. I'm just here to share my faith in who I am. I could not come here and share anything about me without showing that how it was my faith that allowed me to be able to take these steps. And as I take some steps, I take a few steps back because it's faith and fear. But I also realize that faith and fear cannot operate in the same way. You can't. You can't walk in faith and have fear at the same time. Now, fear, I learned a long time, is false evidence appearing real. Okay? And it is. You're right. I mean, accepting to go to another church was fear. It was fear because I loved the comfort zone of where I was. And we get so comfortable. Sometimes we get so comfortable we can't even get to where God wants us to be because we so comfortable. But when I had that conversation with Pastor Hoskins, he was like, okay, God, I got to be obedient. And even from at that time, those were new things that opened up for me. It opened up new opportunities for me to preach locally. Now, I've been preaching around the world. I'd been doing missionary trips. I've been doing all of these things here, but I had not done a lot of local preaching. But God started using me in ways that it could only be the steps that I took blindfolded. So how do we continue to do that? We got to do it one step at a time. Truly one step at a time, because faith is a walk. Okay? It is taking a step knowing that God got you, or that there's something bigger at the top of the staircase, at the very top. Could you do that if you didn't know what was there? That's food for thought. I know that I have a few of you still watching, and I hope you'll stick with me. If you have any questions about how to take those steps when you truly don't know what's at the top, and I still don't know. I still don't know. All I know that as I keep taking the steps, I'm getting closer and closer and closer to the goal or the vision that God has. And I have to trust him in the process. In the process. And it's one of those things that it just takes, you don't have to see the full staircase. And it might be that the staircases might be 20 stairs. It might be 100 stairs. I California girl, one of my very favorite amusement parks, and I guess it's not an amusement park, it's Hearst Castle. Okay, if you've ever been to California, go to Hearst Castle. It is, first of all, it's the most beautiful place in the world to me, and it's on the cliff, and you can see the Pacific Ocean. Now, William Randolph Hearst is on this house, and it's a huge mansion. He's entertained all these amazing actors and actresses and whatever else. And Michael Jackson actually, if I'm recalling this story correctly, he actually created his Never Never Land based upon how Hearst put this castle together. Well, when you first do the first tour, there's 3 tours. The very first tour that you do, there's all these stairs. Okay, and they'll tell you. Now, the second tour is even more stairs. Okay, and they tell you if you got health issues and you can't climb stairs, don't do this tour. Okay, so the very first time my ex-husband and we went on this tour, we had no idea what Hearst Castle was, and all we saw was this beautiful castle on the side of the road, and we wanted to go. We were on Pacific Coast Highway. So we get there, and I just during a time where I had some really, really bad headaches, but I want to try it anyway. Okay. All right, y'all already know that if I'm crazy enough to climb the stairs blindfolded, I'm going to try something at least once. And so I'm literally, we're there, and literally the more you walk, you didn't know how many more stairs there was. And we really didn't know what was at the top, but we kept climbing. And we kept climbing, and we kept climbing. And then I kept saying, well, wait a minute. Is tour number 2 going to be more stairs? But every time we take a step, there was more beauty at the top. I mean, we took a few stairs and we got to the top, and William Randolph's has this beautiful, if you ever have a chance, just Google it, has this beautiful pool, just a beautiful pool. And then we climbed a little bit more, and there was a little bit more, but we couldn't see that until we took the steps. So climbing sometimes means just taking the steps. And you don't know what the beauty is at the top until you take it. Each one of my little steps, I see a little bit more glimpse of what God's doing. I see a little bit more, just a little bit more of where it's going. You know, I don't know what the end of this year is going to be, but it takes a step. It just takes a step. Someone says, hey, would you come and do this? Yeah, I'll do it. And sometimes, and I know I might get in trouble with this one, because I know we all need to make some money. But at the end of the day, if at the top of those stairs is all you see is money and prosperity, you're missing it. You're missing it. I think that those are residual of taking the steps. Each time you take a step, God is going to take you a little bit closer to everything you would ever imagine. And the money and all those other things, it's just extra. It's just gravy, as my mama used to say. You want some gravy on that rice? And you got to eat the rice first, and you put a little gravy on it. But you could have that rice without the gravy. So for me, writing the book was the first step. No, actually, I'm going to go back. Leaving California was the first step. Beginning to say yes to writing the book, and then saying yes to ministry, and then saying, okay, yes, God, I hear you. It's time for me to move. Going to the Philippines for the first time, when I thought I was going there for one thing, and God ended up using me for something else. Leading this amazing team, international team, that I share this all the time. They said, who's they? That's going to be another book one day. Who's they? They said I'd never work again. Here I am. Not only am I working, I've been on the same job for over 7 years, and I'm working multiple jobs as well, and I'm doing what God called me to do. So the enemy, I don't want to give him too much power. He has no power. So they don't have any control over what little old me can do, because I'm continuing to take those steps one at a time. And as I take each one of those steps, God reveals a little bit more of what's at the top of the stairs. He takes a little bit more and says, "Ooh, girl, look what I got." And you keep on walking. That's where our joy comes from, because you know that it is God that is helping you be able to do those things. It is truly, truly a walk of faith. I hear people talk about faith all the time. I got faith, but it's a walk. It's a movement. It's not standing stagnant. It means walking when you don't see it all, when you don't even know what God is calling you to. I spoke yesterday to a group of people, and many of them were called to ministry and whatever else, and many of us are not clear what that looks like. Each and every one of us is called to something. The question is, will you take the steps to get to where you're trying to go, or where God is sending you? The biggest thing is that's where the joy comes in, because each time I take a step, my joy is like, is that it's pleasing God, number one, because I took the step. And I trust him. I trusted him enough to take that next step and the next step. Do I even know what the next step is for me? No. I just keep taking it one day at a time, one step at a time, one stair at a time. Trusting God that at the top might be eternity for me. But each one of those steps is a journey that I'm enjoying joy, because I know that it is leading me to where ultimately God desires me to be. Yes, someone asked me, when are you going to write that next book? It's in the making. Do I know when it's going to come out? No, I don't. I still have a couple entries for another anthology that I'm just trusting God through the process. And when he says stop and do it, I'm going to do it. And that's what it's all about. Again, do I see the full picture? Nope. I do not see the full picture. Okay. And so I really just want everyone to take away from this topic today. What is that one thing that might be at the top of your staircase that you need to take that first step? Maybe it's buying a house. Yeah, I did that this last year. I thought I'd never own a house again. But fear and faith can't work together. Fear and faith. Oh God, I want the house, but I'm scared. What if I lose it again, God? No, God, no. But I had to take that step to try. And then God opened up doors that only God. So that's why I was talking about the residuals that comes with it. Each step, there's a reward for each and every one of them. You got to look for it though. It might not slap you across the face. You gotta trust God that each time you have a step that there's something greater. You know, last year buying the house, it was like, okay, and I was in the midst of it. I'm just being real because I didn't know where the finances was gonna come from. I'd been through a divorce. My credit wasn't great. And had you ever went and bought a car and you just know that they're not going to give you that car because your credit don't look good? And so that's kind of what my situation was. But I go in there and the guy says, oh, we got you. We can take care of it. That was a walk of faith, trusting God. But again, that's not the top of the staircase. That's just one step with a little bit of glorification along the way, a little joy. Another step is a little bit more joy. You know, so I've shared just a little bit about my story. You got to pick up my book when you get a chance, or keep following me so you can hear a little bit more about my story. Because there's so much more. I'm also a part of the anthology that's put together by Teresa Holmes and Bounce Back DNA Movement. One of Wounds Healed. I love that book because it was so many of us beautiful ladies coming together, all have some level of something that had been wounded, and God was healing us through something. You know, and so it was a great book. It is a great book. If you need a copy of it, make sure you follow Bounce Back DNA Movement so you can grab your copy, and so that you can hear some of the amazing stories that many of us were able to share. My story was about dancing in the rain. Sometimes we just gotta dance. And if you've ever watched me, you'll see me, despite being sick, no matter how my situation is, I'm gonna find myself dancing in the rain. And our scars, it's okay to reveal our scars, because actually, as we talk about beauty out of brokenness, each and every one of our scars is actually, and I wish I had something to show you, but I don't. But if you think of what we call the kintsugi method, there is a jar that has been broken. It has been cracked. And you think about God mending you at those cracks. If he was to put some glue right where you've been broken, actually you're stronger at that particular place. It was William Shakespeare that talked about we're stronger at our broken places. So actually where we've been cracked and God is mending us, and we can show our scars, the beautiful scars that we have, there's beauty there. And with the kintsugi, and get a moment, And if I think there's maybe a video on my YouTube channel about this, but in the kintsugi thing, where you've been cracked, when the light shines through, and it shines through, you can see more vividly the various things that God has healed through you. So I truly believe that in our brokenness and the very things that we've gone through are the very things that God truly uses to make us stronger so that we can help somebody else with our story. So I encourage you to use your story to help somebody, maybe not publicly on a stage if that's not your thing. Maybe it's not writing a book, but maybe it's just that friend of yours that is going through something that only you can encourage. So I just want to encourage somebody, because I know that there's something in each and every one of us that allows us to be a blessing to someone else. It's through our story. I believe God gives each and every one of us a story, a testimony. Maybe it was that job you never thought you'd ever get. Share that with somebody who thinks that they'll never get that job that they are looking for. Maybe it's that house. Maybe it's that car. Maybe it's that education. I got my first theological degree at the age of 50. Yeah, I act a fool walking across that stage because I was 50 years old, getting a degree in theology that I thought I'd never, ever get. That's joy. So I'm going to take this time, and I've been asked to make sure that you have my information. Make sure you follow me on Facebook, and go to RaleneSpeaks.com and check out my website. You'll find I have 2 YouTube channels, and I speak regularly on that. You can also follow me on Ralene Berry speaker and author page. Go ahead and check us out. I do have a copy of my book here that you can grab a copy of it on RaleneSpeaks.com. And all the information about me is on my website. And but I also want to make sure that you're following Bounce Back DNA. If you've come here directly from my page, or you're connected to me directly, go ahead and follow Bounce Back DNA movement, because there's some amazing things that my dear friend Teresa is doing through this movement. And I'm just honored to just truly be here. If you have any questions for me personally, feel free to go ahead and send those messages right now, and I'll try and answer those questions. I want to just be obedient to time. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Those of you, I want to take this time and recognize the amazing guys in the Philippines who are watching live. I thank you guys. You know what? I could not do half the things that I'm doing without my amazing guys in the Philippines, and the amazing people that have been blessing me. So I want to acknowledge them and the love that they continue to share for me. And so if you have any questions, I see a comment, finding joy in God. Yes, it is so important that we recognize our joy is not in our external things. Joy comes from knowing Christ, to me. And I believe, and that allows you to find joy despite your circumstances. You could be sick and find joy. Okay. Now, I heard a long time ago that there's nowhere in Scripture, if you really look for it, that talks about being happy, you know. And when God sends me that new husband, I'm sorry guys, I'm laughing, but when God sends me the husband, we need to stop talking about being happy, because Scripture don't tell us. Because despite things that are going to come to us, because every day in our marriages, things are not going to always make us happy, but we can still find joy because we love this person because of the Christ in us, because of who God is in us. We can love them despite the fact that they're doing things we don't like. And so I believe that we can find joy in so many things despite our circumstances. And that's what James 1, the whole book of James 1 is all about. I truly, it's interesting how God has given me a certain platform, a certain topic over and over again. And sometimes I feel like, okay, God, why you got me talking about that? Because I believe that that's the very thing that God is using to help me help others, because that's where I was helped. Okay. The book, As I Encourage You, I Encourage Myself, is about sharing my story so that I can help somebody else. How that I can encourage you through a divorce, how I can encourage you through disease, how I can encourage you through one of my book chapters was about looking for love in all the wrong places. And how do you find joy in the middle of that? You know, I'm looking, and okay, God, where's this man or whoever it is who gonna love me the way you love me? The thing is that when I find joy in his love, the other love comes along with it. So I know that I am probably off target with that, but I really want you all to walk away with a little bit of understanding that God uses each and every one of us for a purpose. Okay? As you begin to climb those stairs today, I want you to write down something. Promise me, if you do it and you begin to see God through it, reach out to me and let me know. As you take that step on those stairs and you don't see the whole staircase, tell me about the joy that you experience on each and every one of those steps. Okay, you say yes to this. God bless you with this. How can you find joy as you keep walking up that staircase? Not knowing what's at the top. It's not about what's at the top. It's about the journey. And as you take those steps, trust God through each and every one of those steps and see Him in the midst of it. And as I mentioned, there's a little bit of reward with each one of those steps as you get closer and closer to the ultimate goal. As I begin to close, I want to remind you of something. We can't do it alone. We can't. We need each other. And we need Christ on the journey with us. And if I don't leave you with nothing else, know that despite the fact that you cannot see the full staircase, it is your faith that as you take one step at a time, God's got you. And remember, to each and every one of you, as I encourage you, I am truly encouraging myself. Make sure that you go and follow Bounce Back DNA movement. And make sure that if you have any additional questions, that you reach out to me at RaleneSpeaks.com or on Facebook at Ralene Berry, speaker and author. If you're an Instagram person, go ahead and follow me there. If it's out there, I'm probably on it. And if you haven't followed me on YouTube, you'll be able to see more of this. And actually, I will be live on YouTube pretty soon. So I am just truly blessed, and I thank each and every one of you for joining. I know that it's on a Sunday night, it's late, and at this time, I am going to end. And I just truly thank you, and may God bless each and every one of you. Take care.